you spend a college is where you spend your life. Some people live in colleges is where you get like your extracurriculars. It's just like a kind of home away from home for you. But in the postgraduate case, for PhDs I'm sure, but I'm not sure for MPhils, you don't need to be accepted by college. So usually in undergrad, you need to be accepted by college to be accepted by Cambridge. But in postgrad, you can be accepted by Cambridge and you don't need to be accepted by the college you want. So if you put a college in and you don't get that college, like don't feel bad, you're already in Cambridge, so another college will take you in the end. And then finally, you need to apply and you need to make sure you upload all your supporting documents, including the references before you submit your application. And then you need to think of what else you need. Some courses will need like a separate written like work that isn't your personal statement or CV. Some will need GRE scores, I think the finance-based courses. Some will need IELTS, PhDs will need a research proposal, and you need your official transcript with your school stamp and someone important signature on it. And the good thing about Cambridge is it has the organization called the Cambridge Trust, which provides funding for students. So you don't need to do a separate application for each scholarship you want provided by the Cambridge Trust. You just need to say on your application form, oh, I need funding, and you just list a bunch of scholarships that you think you're eligible for, and then the admission office takes it from there. So that's good. But there are also other scholarships such as Cambridge and the Commonwealth, as well as the Chevening, that need a separate application process. So you need to know, in advance whether you need to do a separate funding application or you're just happy to go with the internal Cambridge University funding on the application. And some courses need to, you need to know who your potential supervisor is. So that's what we're going to talk about later. You need to have contacted someone that you're interested in working with for your research, and they need to be aware you're making the application. And it might not be that they take you, they could just refer you to someone else, but it always helps your application if you've made contact with someone. And finally, the interview, where we, depending on if you're successful, we can provide further assistance for the interview preparations. So next slide. So an overview of the timeline, we have 4 general sessions, each August, September, October, November. And the expectation is to have 1 mentor-mentee meeting per week. So you need to have a set schedule with your mentor. And depending on if you actually need it, if you think that, oh, I might not need to use a full 1 hour this week, can just have like a quick chat and let them know what's happening, that's fine. But just, it's based on your own needs. So you need to make sure that you're getting the support you have, but also be mindful of the time of your mentor as well. You don't want to overload them as well. Next slide. So this is an overview of the schedule. So right now in August, we're having our first general session, and you need to start thinking about contacting potential supervisors, your referees, and getting to know what your requirements are for the course, and if you need be, prepare for standardized tests and prepare your official transcript if you don't have that yet. Then in September, we have the second general session, which is on funding and personal statement and CV writing tips. And you're also following up in potential supervisors and referees and working on what you started this one. In October, we're going to move on to PhD proposals, which is not for all of you, but it could be useful if you're going to research anyway, so you should come to the sessions. And we also want you to work on polishing your essay responses. And November is when we have the last general session, which will be a Q&A session. And in that session, the mentors will also be invited so they can answer general questions that all the mentees have as a group session. And hopefully by this time, you're like at the last leg of your application and most things are looking the right way that you want it to look in preparation to submit everything by the 2nd of December. also at the end of September, there's a mid-program progress report, which is where you tell us what you have accomplished, how far you've gone in your journey, what you need to do. And if you feel behind, you can let us know and we can support you. Next slide, please. So we have a few resources provided to mentees. There's going to be a WhatsApp group that we'll create and we'll send the link sometime in the coming week. And there's also a program Google folder which has tips on writing CVs, personal statements, different funding availables within the universities and also within colleges. So that's something you can think about. You can choose a college mostly because they give you funding, and that's fine. And need-based financial assistance for application fees. So people applying for a PhD don't need to pay application fees, and people that are applying for other non-PhD courses will need to pay $50, which was reduced from $75 last year. And yes, as I said, in the event that you're invited for an interview, we will provide mock interviews and support for those as well. Next slide. So guidelines on communication. So we advise that you maintain a professional relationship, like take it as working with a colleague rather than, in the first instance, if you get really close, then that's fine. But we don't want, because of the difference in culture and everything, we don't want like any sort of perceived disrespect between mentors and mentees. So try to strike a balance between what you expect from your mentor and what they expect from you. And then be proactive, make it easy for mentors. They don't realize what you're thinking. You have to let them know what difficulties you're having, what you're struggling with, or even give them like ideas of how you can solve a certain problem together. And let them know any updates. Let them know if you decided who your referees are and if they have agreed to do so. Let them know whether you've gotten a potential supervisor. Just let them know each step of the process so that they can know like what else they can support you with. Let them know any challenges you're having. And they're there to help you. So they're there to give you advice. And sometimes they might have a different way of doing things from you. And it's not, if they give you, and they might have to give you negative feedback, but it's not to attack you, it's more to help you and to help you bring the best application possible. So it's not like you don't have to feel attacked when they give you advice. If you don't agree with them, then you can try and talk it out. It's not like that word is the final say. At the end of the day, it's your application, but you have to keep that level of respect for them as someone that's helping you do something so important. And yeah, as I said, there are different cultural and different backgrounds and cultures. So you need to be aware that some people might be more informal than where you grew up. So they might like, maybe you don't like people calling you by your first name and they want to call you by your first name. It's just to realize that they're not doing it out of disrespect. Maybe they don't know. So you need to set those boundaries in the beginning if you're uncomfortable with it. Yes. Yeah, so boundaries are important. They help make the relationship more effective and more useful to you. And if you have any problems with your mentor, if you feel like there's like difficulties with communication, you can let I or Maisha know, or Alice as well, and we can try and come in and mediate and like make sure that the relationship doesn't break down. And yeah, if you have any financial concerns for the application, then you should meet us rather than your mentor. They're not there to help you gain financial support or help you think about these things. That's what we're here for. They're just there to help you fill the application form and get your essays done. And yeah, make sure that you respect them as they're expected to respect you as well. And just have a respectful relationship. Yeah. So now we're moving on to Maisha's section, I think. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. I don't think I formally introduced myself, but I'm Maisha Jemison. I do my PhD in the history and philosophy of science. And I essentially look at the use of like artificial intelligence for political elections, specifically within sub-Saharan Africa. So my work focuses actually on elections in Kenya and Nigeria. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this program. And I hope that all of you are, one, excited to have been chosen, because it was really hard for us to choose this cohort because we received so many applications, but also because this is a really exciting opportunity to be mentored by folks who have familiarity with your research area, like applications like Cambridge, postgraduate work, but most importantly, folks who are really committed to ensuring that you're able to put forth the best application. So really excited to have you all. Switching over to the slide. So one of the important things about your work, specifically if you're a PhD student, but also what's beneficial even if you're a master's student, especially if you're on like a taught or research course, is being able to reach out to potential supervisors. Thinking about who you should be reaching out to, but also the methods for reaching out to them and when. It's, in my opinion, it's never too early to reach out to someone that you're interested in working with. And you can have that relationship be like rather casual in terms of your first approach, something that is helpful in making that approach is saying, okay, you see someone whose work you're interested in or whose research aligns with the work you're doing, or maybe even in your previous studies, there might be someone at Cambridge whose work you might have cited often. It's helpful to reach out to them to get a gauge of the current work that they're working on, to let them know what your interests are, and to schedule a call or even just a thread via email where you can share with them your interests and see if they might be interested in working with you, but also, seeing if they have recommendations for people whose work might be more strongly associated with the work you're interested in. In terms of how you should reach out, um, there are a bunch of different ways. So as we kind of talked about earlier, like doing your research is really important in this process. And so being able to understand the department that you're applying to, the work that that department does, the new projects that might be coming into that department. Maybe they got a really big grant that might be beneficial for you as a researcher, new faculty members they have coming in, or like the track record of where people have gone after doing that program. All of these things are helpful to consider. Also, thinking about not just one department, just because it's directly related to your last degree, but also what are some other departments that are in that research area. And so for me, as someone who does kind of like the social life of science, or like science tech society studies, there are different departments that I could have applied to at Cambridge that would have allowed me to do this really exciting research that I love, but also would have given me a chance to be supported and like find communities that were related to my research interests, even if they weren't directly within, my last department. Um, as I mentioned before, you might have work or papers that you've referenced that are by Cambridge faculty members, or even work that's not, that might be related to some of the work they do. And so all of these things are kind of ways for you to be able to find something to connect you to that department or that faculty member, or that research center, so that you can get that conversation started. Something that's really helpful is getting your credentials ready. When you're reaching out to them, it's one thing to say, hi, I'm interested in applying to this master's program or this PhD program. It's another thing to come having already done your research, having your CV updated and ready to be presented in front of someone who's going to be looking at it from an academic standpoint. But to also have maybe your transcript in line so that they see that you have a track record of doing well academically in that space, or that you have a variety of classes that you've taken that relate to the research you want to do, and that show that you have a grounded background in the work you're applying, or the degree program that you're applying for. And something else that is helpful, sorry, let me just mute. Something else that'll be helpful for you is already having your research proposal together. And sometimes that can be an abstract of the work that you're interested in doing. And other times it can be that fully developed research proposal that, you'll have had a chance to have revised by your mentors that you have via CAMP. The last thing we'll say is, there are so many ways to reach out and so many resources that you can include as you're reaching out. But all of that eventually has to go into this email that you're going to send to that department or to those faculty members. And that's also something that you can work on drafting with your mentor. One, because they have experience seeing what that type of contact looks like, but they can provide some new perspective or Cambridge specific perspective that you might not have. And especially if your mentor is in the same department or has worked with a faculty member that you're interested in working with, they might have other personal experience or knowledge that could be helpful to you as you're building out your application and reaching out to that faculty member. Next slide. I mentioned a few of these things already, but as you're and you'll also be able to work with this alongside your mentor. But getting straight to the point in the email will be super helpful. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm interested in this program. I have this background, whether it's academic background or also a professional background that makes me particularly suited for this work. And here's the research proposal I want to have. But also I've attached my CV and my transcript. Those things are very direct, providing them with the necessary information that they need to kind of have, at least on paper, an understanding of who you are as a researcher and the type of topics you're interested in. But also because they're getting so many emails, it's helpful for them to be able to get that in one straight shot, as opposed to having to read a super long email that you might send that kind of tells your whole life story. So yeah, as I mentioned, being able to share, okay, I'm reaching out because of this one thing, and here's a brief bit about who I am as a person. If you can talk about their work or connect it to your work interests, that can be incredibly helpful. But also letting them know that, you're interested in having them supervising you, and here's why you think that they are particularly suited to be your supervisor. And then, thanking them for their time, letting them know you look forward to hearing from them, and kind of closing out that email. All of these are really core parts to kind of crafting that full blurb of, hey, and kind of giving a pitch of sorts of, I'm interested in working with you. Here are some of the reasons why I'm qualified for the program I'm applying to, or why I'm interested in the program I'm applying to. And here are some of the reasons why you should be interested in having me as someone you're supervising. One of the challenges is, and this happens across the board, whether it's in academia or even the professional world, sometimes you email people and they do not reply back. And that can be for a variety of reasons. One of the tough things during the summer here, so looking at kind of that July to September period that we're in right now, is that people might go on holiday. They might, be going on sabbatical or coming back from sabbatical. They might just be super busy with other research or doing like field work. And so sometimes you have to kind of have that follow up to make sure, one, that they've seen your message, two, that you kind of get a response, even if it's, no, I can't supervise you, or, perhaps maybe you should work with this person instead. And your mentor can be incredibly helpful with that, whether it's sending a reminder to follow up, or perhaps reaching out to someone different in the department, or even, asking them if they don't think that you two are a match, whether it's based on time or research interests, if they can suggest someone else who might be better suited for you to kind of work with. But all of these things are kind of your responsibility of being able to find that supervisor, following up with them, making sure that you're keeping up with the materials that you need to develop for your application, but also kind of following up to make sure that you do find someone who is well suited to supervise you. One of the big things that you'll notice throughout this entire application process, even though you have like a mentor, even though you have Chief and I who are running the program, it's really on you to make sure that your application is successful. And a lot of that will be based off of following the timeline that we provide, preparing the resources that we've suggested and that your program requires, making sure you're being really diligent in doing this work, but also taking the feedback and the advice from people who might be more affiliated with Cambridge, who have done graduate programs, who might be able to find that assistance. And sometimes, based on what your familiarity is with Cambridge, people are going to come in, with having a lot of knowledge or experience applying to the university, and some people won't. And so a lot of times your mentor will be able to provide a lot of feedback that will help strengthen your application. And one thing we want to emphasize is understanding that they are here to support you. And sometimes even if they do have constructive feedback that, you might think, you put forth the best application, they're like, actually, here's some really important areas for you to like develop what you're trying to say for your research proposal, or to make your CV more suited to the field that you're applying to. And it's helpful to take that feedback, be able to grow and develop from it, and recognize that our ultimate goal is your acceptance into your PhD program, and making sure that you have, or PhD or master's program, and making sure that you're best prepared. Okay. One of the other things, wow, lots of people you're going to be talking to throughout this entire process. Some of them will be people that you knew from before you're applying to Cambridge, and some of them will be people you're trying to meet now that you're connecting to Cambridge. If we take a look at thinking about referees, it can sometimes be hard for people to ask someone to, write a reference for you, even to know what someone should include in the reference or what you might want them to focus on. And just a reminder, we'll share these slides after, so don't feel like you have to write everything down you see on the slide. We'll just share that material. And so if you're currently studying or have, just finished a program, it would be helpful if you had someone who has served as like a research or academic supervisor or tutor for you, serve as like your first reference, because you want to essentially have someone who can vouch for you or let people know that you are academically prepared to pursue a postgraduate degree at Cambridge. That's something that you want to have someone be able to strongly speak about that. And it should be someone who, maybe you've done really well in their course, or they've advised like your research, or if you worked in their research lab or interned with them in their research center. It might be someone who has served kind of as an academic tutor for you. Anyone who knows your academic background really well, but also understands the program that you're applying to at Cambridge. And then your second referee could also be that person, or you might choose someone from a postgraduate course as well. And so if you take a look at this chart, we provide kind of different options for who that referee could be based on like where you are. So there's some people who are in the mentorship program who are coming directly from their bachelor's degree or directly from a master's degree. There are other people who have completed their, bachelor's and like worked for a while, or might have completed, a bachelor's and a master's degree and have work experience. There's a different level of like degrees of education, but also professional experience. And so we wanted to cater the selection of, referees to those different experiences that people might have. And so if you take someone like me, I did my undergrad, then I started a job, and then I did my master's. And so I'm coming in with, I finished undergrad back in 2018. And so there was a bit of distance between, when I was, last, like, writing on a campus, but then I also came in with some professional experience. And so there are different people who I've, worked with, or who might have supervised or advised me in academic and professional senses, who can attest to how equipped I am to start a PhD program, or, maybe in your case, to start a master's program. And that might come from the academic or professional world. And so for me, it ended up being one of my professors who advised some of my research, who wrote a recommendation. And then there was someone who knew of my academic experience, but also knew me from a professional sense, because we worked together on like a specific board for like 5 or 6 years together. And so they knew me, pretty well as both a student and a professional. And so it was helpful to have that balance of, here's someone who can tell you why I want to do this research and why they think I'll be successful in that sort of program, but also here's someone who can vouch for, the type of professional person I am, and the character that comes along with that, or the values or abilities that come along with that, or who can also talk about skills I've developed that make me particularly suited for the program. So definitely take a look, find where you are in this like leftmost column, and then determine what that balance of referees looks like. And then you can also talk with your mentor about that as well. So some of the things to think about. So sure, you ask someone to be your referee and they say, absolutely, I'd love to write a letter for you. You also should be able to provide context for them for what they should include in that letter. And we have a list of those things there, so I'll run through it relatively briefly. They should know your name and they should spell it correctly. And the name they include should match the name you're using to apply to the program. So I know some of you who applied to the mentorship program might have included like your full name, but then you might go by your second name or a separate name. There should be some matching between that so that it's a cohesive story of who you are, and so that it is accurate to your application. They should be able to tell people how long they've known you and under what context. So it might be a professor who says, I first taught the student in 2019 and they worked in my lab in 2020. So I've known them for 3 years. Or it might be someone who says, this person worked on my team since like 2017. And then they led a project that I was working on in 2021. People who can provide some helpful context of what your relationship is, so that the people who are reading the application understand who it is. It should also be someone who is not a family member. I think it builds a lot more credibility if it's someone who's outside of your family who can give ideally a more balanced perspective of who you are, but also who can talk about you in senses that are more helpful, which are going to be the academic and professional ones, or even in terms of leadership roles that you've had in volunteer experience as well. They should also be able to identify what program that you're applying to. So if you're applying to a PhD in hematology, don't just tell them, oh, I'm applying to a PhD and leave it at that, or I'm applying to Cambridge and leave it at that. Be very specific because you want them to be able to speak specifically to why they are supporting your application to that program. Eventually, they should be able to provide some context on your academic potential and overall aptitude for your, whether it's professional sense or academic sense, or even if you plan to go into academia. They might be able to speak to some of your academic achievements from like publications to prizes to scholarships, to, this person was the top student in their program, whatever that context is, they should be able to help with that. Relevant skills and experience, whether they know you've had 3 years of research experience, or they know that you were the editor for a research magazine, or they know you had 3 summers of working in their lab. That all of that is helpful. They should also speak to how suitable you are for postgraduate study or research. That's the most important thing, because when someone is reading your application, they likely haven't met you, and they can't really speak for whether or not you'll be successful in the program that you're applying to. So people who are able to speak to that and to be very direct and clear, and also holistic in the way that they're describing your suitability for academic research and for your specific program, all of that will be incredibly helpful. And then lastly, personal characteristics. They can speak to your character, of how you're have like high integrity, how you can work independently, how you're innovative, how you're determined, whatever those qualities are for you. All of that is helpful for the folks who are going to be reading your application. And if you take a look below, there are some links that provide some additional guidance through different bodies at Cambridge that help to describe what referees should include, but also some of the things that they should, processes they should go through as they're writing your reference letter. We have some other things to think about. I know there's been lots to think about, but 2 other major things that we're going to go through. So 1, your CV. We want you to update your CVs. We want it to be well organized. One of the things that I always tell people is that each role you apply to, you should have a specialized CV for that. So it shouldn't just be, the same CV that you use at work is the same one you provide here. No, we want it to be particularly edited and revised so that it is very specific to the background and the experiences and the leadership and like the research and all these other things that help to build a strong case that you're going to be a great PhD student or master's student. And so one of the things that's helpful is thinking about it as kind of a bucket CV. So we want to know everything that could be like really beneficial for, sorry, if everyone could stay muted during the presentation, then once we open the FAQ, we can unmute, or you can put questions in the chat and then we can address them there. Great. So we want to know everything, and that's not necessarily, you know, all the details about, you know, maybe things you did in, you know, primary school, but everything that is going to be able to support why you're a good academic applicant for your whatever program it is. And so, you know, if you've won an award while you were in your undergraduate or other postgraduate programs, they should know that. If there are specific courses that you've taken that are directly related to the program that you're applying to, there we go. We want to know that as well. If it's a leadership role that you've held that would really speak to, you know, your character and the type of impact that you might make in your department or at Cambridge, we want to hear about that. And so your mentor will be extremely helpful in making sure that, you know, you curate your CV in a way that really sets you up for success. But then we'll also kind of talk through, like, more specifically some of the things that you want to make sure you include, even the ways you want to format it, but also making sure that all of your documents are like really painting this well-rounded picture of who you are. And the thing to remember is that they only really get to see you via paper. Some of you will have interviews for your program, especially if you're applying to PhD programs. But outside of that, it's really these documents that communicate who you are. So we want to make sure those documents are doing you justice in that way. The other thing, personal statement, CV and personal statement, and then for PhD students, your research proposal. These are some of the most important documents that will go, that you'll submit to the various departments you're applying to. When it comes to your personal statement, it should tell a cohesive story. Not just, okay, I want to study this program at Cambridge and, you know, here's some reasons why, because I want to do this in the future. It should start from, you know, I studied this in undergrad and then I did an internship in that, and that really solidified that this was an area for me. And because of that, I pursued, you know, a master's in this program and then worked in a lab that allowed me to explore this other side of the field that I'm interested in. And it was at that lab that I determined that I really needed to dedicate my efforts to XYZ project and study it at Cambridge because of this research center or this faculty or this academic environment. And then I want to bring it back home to, you know, my home country and make sure that I'm impacting the communities there, because the work that I'm doing is really needed in that community. So all of these things are going to be helpful to curating that full story. I know one of the things that's really helpful is for the committee to that's looking at your application to understand obstacles you've been through and to be able to provide some context, or so that your writing can provide some context on some of the obstacles you've overcome and maybe some of the challenges that might have limited opportunities you were exposed to. This can be really challenging to navigate. So I definitely recommend that you work with your mentor on this, because you want to tell a cohesive story of, you know, your life experience and challenges and like why and how that connects to the research you want to do in the program you're interested in. At the same time, you also don't want to kind of get stuck in telling a story that is so heavy on the challenges you experience that it doesn't, you know, speak for your resiliency and the way that you've been able to achieve so much despite those experiences. So be really intentional about that, but definitely make sure that you're leveraging your mentor as someone who can read through that. And something that was helpful for me is even, you know, allowing, you know, previous mentors just in, you know, my life or in previous academic programs to take a look at some of my documents to make sure I was telling my story helpfully, or even friends who had done graduate programs to see like this story an accurate reflection of who I am. Are there things I'm forgetting? Are there ways I'm not bragging on myself that I should be? And so be really mindful for that. But in addition to that, full story, as we mentioned, going from, I did this in my undergrad, and then that motivated me to go into this space. And then I segued over here. Be sure that you're clear about where your career is headed and what your future aspirations are as well. And that will tell a full story of why Cambridge is so integral to that story. But it will also provide some context for why you might be the perfect fit for your academic program. The last bit is don't get carried away with the tiny details. If you're telling a story of how you worked in this one lab, and then because of some sort of like political issues in your country, you were no longer able to work in that lab, and you have to maybe do desk research or something else. Be careful that you're telling us a high level story so that they get a good idea of the work you were doing. But you don't need to tell them on Monday I did this, and then on Tuesday I did this, or on Wednesday I like checked my results, and then on Thursday I ran new experiments, and on a Friday you can tell them I worked in this lab that was motivated in looking at like comorbidity of HIV and chronic diseases, and here are our results. That kind of overarching picture instead of the small details that aren't as important to the committee, but also take away from the space you have to tell the rest of your story. Okay. All right, so we're going to use the rest of our time for a question and answer period. What would be most helpful is if people entered their question into the chat, and then we can scroll through and answer the questions based on that. And so Chisholm and I will take some time going back and forth there. But I'll start by taking a look through the chat so far to see if we missed anything there. But yes, feel free to send your questions to the chat and we'll get to them there. I guess I can stop sharing my screen. Or actually, while people are putting their responses in or their questions into the chat, I'm just going to go over these last few things. So we mentioned this. I'm going to mute you really quickly. We mentioned this before, but we will be sharing the slides from today in addition to the recording of this session. And so, sorry, if everyone could check and make sure that they are muted, that would be helpful. Perfect. So we're going to share the slides from today in addition to this recording. So you'll receive that within a week. We will also share with you a link so that you can join the WhatsApp group. When you receive that link, please join the group as soon as possible so we don't have to kind of follow up and see who's not in the group. Another thing to do is to check out the resources folder. It was included in the original email that we sent matching you with your mentor. If you have not been in contact with your mentor, please reach out to them. We definitely want you all to take ownership and kind of agency over the relationship you have with your mentor. So it would be really helpful if you haven't made contact with them to contact them. And if your mentor has not contacted you, please let us know. Or if you reached out to your mentor and they have not replied, please let us know by responding to the email that we sent you to match you with the mentor. That's the best way for us to be able to keep track of these things. If you have already shared with us that your mentor has not reached out, we have made contact with them. And I think there's one person I just need to follow up with who might be on this call, I'm not sure. And then if we've heard from your mentor that you have not replied, you probably received a WhatsApp message from me just to check in. Another thing you'll want to hop on is updating your CV. You'll see some advice for that in the resources folder as well, but you want to make sure, one, that it's comprehensive, but also that you're starting to tailor it more closely to what you would need to submit to someone who's looking at you from a more academic standpoint. That is not to say that you shouldn't include professional things. It's saying that the way you're wording your previous experience, but also even the order of how you include each section in your CV will shift because it's more of an academic role that you're applying for now. You will begin researching and contacting your potential supervisors. We definitely recommend that you have your mentor kind of step in to provide some of the materials that you're sharing with the supervisor in addition to the email that you send. So make sure that you have a chance to take a look at that as well. Contacting referees, it is best to, you can contact your referees now. You know what programs you're applying to. You have an idea of what is expected of from a referee because of some of the resources we're sharing with you. But also you want to give them enough time to fully write your reference, especially because they could be writing references for others. So now that it's only August, the application, the final funding deadline is very early December for that first round that Chisholm mentioned earlier. You want to, let them know now, you might even want to schedule a call, or if you can see them in person, a meeting with them to provide some context on the program you're applying to. Prepare your transcript. We know it can be hard to request these documents. I know for me, for the first school I went to, and I just needed 1 year of transcript from them. It was very hard to get in contact with them. They didn't accept online requests. I essentially had to have a request mailed in, and then they mailed me something back. And it was really helpful that I contacted them early because I had no idea how long that process will take. Whereas the last two institutions I went to, I submitted the request and I had something within 24 hours. So you just want to make sure you do those things early, especially if you've already graduated from your program. Your grades should be, either already, finished or close to being finished. And so if they are already complete, request it now. There's no reason to wait. And then the last thing, research and begin your preparations for any standardized tests that you might have to do, whether that's language-based or based on the particular academic area. As Chisholm mentioned, some programs might require a GRE or a GMAT or some other testing. And yeah, those are the major things to kind of think about. But again, we'll include the slides, the recording, and also the link for the WhatsApp group in the next email that we send you all to follow up to this session. Okay.
Yeah, also I wanted to just mention something about contacting referees. So on the application, it tells you to provide details of your referees. So it is then the university then contacts them through the portal. So it's good that you contact them in advance because you then know what the details are to tell the university to contact them, essentially. That's just what I wanted to say.
Perfect. I'm going to try to figure out how to unpin my other screen. And then, oh, thank you. We'll start checking some of these questions.
I think someone said they're not part of the WhatsApp group yet. Yeah, we'll send the link in the coming week. So no one is part of the WhatsApp group yet.
So yeah. Okay, the next one I want to ask, after getting the mail of acceptance, I'm to reach out to my allocated mentor so yes, please reach out to your mentor and get that conversation started, especially now that we've had this session. You have some context and kind of action items to work on with them to kind of get the ball rolling. So yeah, reach out to them. And again, if you don't hear from your mentor within a week of reaching out, please reply to that thread where we matched you. We will we read your reply emails. A lot of you send thank yous and stuff. We may not reply because if you're not asking a question, but we do read them. So we'll be able to see and then follow up. Thank you for the presentation. Please, does Cambridge University accept the transcript evaluated by WES as an official transcript? I'm not familiar with WES.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think for the application, the transcript you upload doesn't really need to be official, I think. But then if you get an offer, the way the uni does it is it looks at it through this kind of software or this digital software thing. So there are just certain things that your transcript has to have to be accepted by that software. So it's just best to get the most official transcript you can get your hands on from your school, essentially. But yeah, we're not familiar with what WES is. If you can just clarify in the chat, that'll be helpful.
I think you're, sorry, I'm like Googling on my iPad. I think you're talking about World Education Services. I would check to see if they list Cambridge as one of their partnering institutions. And then that will kind of give you like a clearer answer. So it looks like they do have like a list that we just can't go through here live. But yeah, I would check there. Hello, with respect to contacting supervisors, is it advisable to contact another supervisor within the same department for one's program of interest after the first supervisor does not respond to the email for about 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah,
I absolutely would.
Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. And they won't really be offended. They know that they'll be getting reached out to by like, folks who are planning to apply to the program. They also know that, you could apply to work with one supervisor and then get matched with another.
Yeah.
In my specific case, I applied to work with one person and they were like, oh, there's actually someone coming back from sabbatical who would be a perfect fit for you. And then I got paired with that person instead. So there's not a lot of like weird politics there. I would just reach out to like the new person again with this, letting them know the context of, you're applying to this program, you want to do research in this area, you think maybe you would be a good fit with them for this reason. And then, if you're doing PhD, if you can provide, your research proposal or like the version of that you have, and also like your CV and transcript will all be helpful.
Yeah. What are the chances of someone with the set 2-1 getting Gates? Well, this question's for you because I don't have Gates.
So yeah, I'm Gates. So I will say it's possible. I have like met people in my own cohort who like had a 2-1 and were admitted to Gates. Well, the one thing I will say is, in you're applying to funding, apply to everything. Like, don't let them tell you no. Don't tell yourself no. There's so many. It's like funding is so. It's so challenging to get funding, for at least UK programs. So you want to cast your net as wide as possible, so that you're making sure you're, putting forward your best foot for any opportunities for funding that might come. So even, most of the people who applied to this mentorship program, of course, one of the things we're looking at is kind of, that, research excellence, academic excellence, leadership, volunteer experience. We want all of you to like mark that box that you want to apply for Gates, get that additional, reference. Because one thing I will say is like, it's not just Gates that sees that additional reference. It's also like the department you're applying to, they see your full application. So sometimes that additional reference can provide extra context that, makes you an even more attractive candidate for the department you're applying to. Let's see.
Missed the earlier session of the presentation, but wanted to find out if there's application and English proficiency waivers. I think there are application fee waivers, but it depends on the country you're from. So you need to check on the website. For English, I know that if your first degree, if you did your first degree was in English, you may not need to do an English proficiency test, but you can just, it helps to just email the uni directly because they're really helpful as well. And they can just say, oh, you learned in English, so you don't need an English language test. So just email if you're not sure.
There we go. Sorry, I just realized the pen was still there. I covered it with the chat. All right. How do you respond to a professor's mail when he just says, thanks for your interest in my research and good luck in your application, without addressing the topic of him potentially supervising you? Have you seen in their research and requesting for supervision? Oh, this is a good one.
guess you can email and say, I mean, it's not a no, right? So
yeah, I think so as it's so early on, so if I'm in the process of like putting together my application and I've, done what, camp has told me to do, and I've reached out to supervisors early, I would probably kind of list them as like the supervisor I want to work with. I would also follow up with them and confirm that, like, okay, good luck with the application, thank you for the well wishes. Is it okay if I list you as the supervisor I want to work with in my application? Just a direct question where they can give you a yes or no. And then like from there, kind of puts a little bit of pressure on them to just give you an explicit answer. It doesn't mean they're committing to like work with you. You have to see how the application process goes, but at least you have a clear answer of whether, they're okay with you listing them. Yeah. Thanks for the presentation. My question has to do with the standard English test, which is one of the application requirements. When you did your bachelor's in English, are you required to provide this doc? Okay, I'll let you have this one.
yeah, well, you just need to email the department because it varies. I know when I did my undergrad here, but when I was coming for undergrad, I told them that I did secondary school all in English, and they said it's fine, you don't need a language test. So just email them and ask them, if I've done my course in English, do I need to do the English language test? And they will let you know, just to make sure.
Yeah. A lot of these questions that you all have about like process or like what documents will be accepted, some of them are answered. You have to search them a little bit on like the Cambridge website. So I would definitely put some of the questions you have about what can be accepted or what's allowed in there. And if you need that extra bit of confidence, just so all your ducks are in a row and everything is taken care of, feel free to like reach out to I think in this case probably reach out to like the International Students Office, or if it's specifically about your department, to reach out to them to ask questions. So I think like
the admissions office as well. Postgraduate admissions.
Yeah, postgraduate admissions office is like a really big one. And to get a straightforward answer, but definitely check the website before you reach out. It just shows that you kind of done your due diligence and done your research as well. Someone or Peace asked, could I use the student copy of my official transcript? So I'm not familiar with it there being just like a student copy. So for my official transcripts, like whether I'm getting it for myself or for like applying to a program, it's all like the same transcript. If it says on the student copy that it's a student copy, then I would go back and request one that you can give to institutions. But if it doesn't say explicitly student copy, then because it's an official transcript, I would just use it for the application. Kutsai, thank you very much for the session. Our potential supervisors / Cambridge professors on the Cambridge website, are their profiles there? Yes, but it's department specific. So department or research center specific. So I'm in the Department of History and Philosophy of Science. My research center is at the Center for Future of Intelligence. Both of them list what their like fellows and faculty, who their fellows and faculty members are. Some departments will list like, here are like the supervisors accepting, new PhD students. Some of them won't. And so the best thing for you to do is kind of take a look at their profile, see if it specifically says they're accepting students, and or take a look at if there is a list of students that they're already supervising or like they have supervised in the past. But especially as you're in this early stage, it's okay to like directly reach out to them to see if they're taking in new students. So in the email that you originally sent them, where you're saying, you want to work with them, you can ask them if they're taking students. And then, sorry, Mansoor, I see your question. We're going to take these last few from this list, and then we'll come to you. Oh, sorry. Another thing about like the supervisors and professors, sometimes I also like Google them and like check out like their like personal websites, because you get to find a lot more information about them and some of the research projects they do. that might even let you know, like, oh, this is really the person I want to work with, or that might say like, oh, like that's not really my work. Let me see who else in the faculty would be helpful to work with. And then a last thing about this question is when I was looking for supervisors, I went through and looked at the research that the students being supervised by that person or in the department were doing. And then when I found people whose research was similar to mine, whether like within the same disciplines, still that like science, tech, society, I went back and saw, okay, who's supervising them? Okay, this is within like my area. Let me, see if this person's open to having a new person. Do you want to take the next one?
Would it be a good idea to do the GRE exam to increase your chances of a PhD admission? I don't think it will increase your chances, like unless it says do a GRE, then obviously increases your chances. But if it doesn't explicitly say, I don't think the UK is really big on GRE in general anyway. So, and I just know there are just a few courses by the business school that ask for a GRE. So if it doesn't say you need it, then don't do it, because you shouldn't waste your time.
The one thing I'll add is that I know a lot of you will be like some of you will be applying to like Cambridge and other places in the UK, or perhaps some schools like the US, Canada, and around the world. We definitely want like the advice that we provide through the program, whether it's through these general sessions or the one-on-one experiences you have with your mentors, to inform some of the other applications you're writing. So as you're writing personal statements for Cambridge, you're going to get tips that are going to be helpful for programs that you're applying to in other countries or at other even universities in the UK. So keep that in mind. But yeah, I agree with the advice that was just given. If they don't ask for GRE or mention it anywhere, there might not even be a place for you to upload it in the application. Yeah. I don't think that applies specifically for the UK. Just a quick question. All of oops, sorry, me and you, all of us. Okay, there we go.
Oh, someone's hand is up.
Yeah, I think they raised their hand after Kazai's question. Sorry, we can go to the next two. Just a quick question. All of us who are selected for this program, do you see us as potential Cambridge students? Our grades are good enough? We looked at a number of things. So I mentioned briefly earlier that we looked at your like kind of academics. We looked at the personal statements, like the brief statements that you included that kind of told us a little bit about like why you're interested in Cambridge and like career things. We looked at leadership potential. We looked at your leadership experience that you already had, research experience, volunteer experience. If you've been working for a while, we looked at, like professional experience as well. There are a bunch of different things that we looked at. And then there are also like certain markers that we also included for like students with a disability who are in conflict zones or who identify as women. Sorry, I'm letting someone else in. So there are a bunch of different things we looked at. So I wouldn't just say like, oh, it's just because of grades, like we made that cutoff. No, we looked at everything because we know the committee is going to look at everything as well. So we wanted to make sure we just had people who we thought would be strong applicants. We don't know what will be the results, but to answer your question briefly, like we chose people who we thought had a good shot at putting forth like really good applications to Cambridge.
Yeah.
That, would benefit from, having someone advise them along the way and like that one-on-one way, because we thought the work you've already done is leading you in that direction. And then sorry, Chisholm, just remind me to go to Mansoor.
Yeah, thank you. So please, during your presentation earlier, you made mention of upon application for a graduate position in the Cambridge that you are automatically eligible for funding opportunities. So I want to ask that, okay, do you mean, just to clarify, do you mean that if I apply for a graduate position, the likes of I don't need to apply for the likes of maybe the Bill Gates Foundation scholarship and those likes of scholarship as per funding? So like I do, sorry, like I don't really need to put in a separate application for those foundation scholarship. Is that what you meant, or you are referring to some other fundings separately?
Oh, yeah, let me take the question. So in Cambridge, we have what's called the Cambridge Trust, and it has like a bunch of scholarships provided by the Cambridge Trust. But these are different from the Bill Gates and Commonwealth and Chevening scholarship because those are not provided by Cambridge per se. So you need a separate application for those scholarships. But for example, the Cambridge Africa Scholarship that I'm on, or the International Development Bank Scholarship that's provided, they are provided by the university. So on the application, you just need to say, I want to be considered for all the scholarships provided by Cambridge universities. So you don't need to do a separate application for these ones, unless they might say, some of them actually do ask for a separate application. So if you want to do Gates, Commonwealth, Chevening, I think, and some other scholarships, then you need a separate application. But for the ones provided by university, you don't need to do a whole new application for those.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah. Sorry, please. So based on what you answered just now, so if perhaps I applied for the likes of Gates Foundation scholarship. So yeah. if I get to be accepted by Gates Foundation scholarship and that of Cambridge, would I be allowed to keep both funding sources, or I will have to pick one?
Yeah, you have to pick one unless it's not a complete scholarship. So if it's like partial, like one is partial and then maybe one is full, then you obviously take the full one. But if they're both partial, you can add on the scholarship. So you can't have more than one full scholarship, but you can have multiple partial scholarships, if you get.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Let's see.
What's the next?
When applying
yeah.
When applying to Cambridge, is it necessary to choose a college of interest, and is that advisable? Also, do some of these colleges give funding for programs? Oh, that's a great question. So you're not required to select a college when you apply to Cambridge. It's optional. I would say it's advisable. And that's for a number of different reasons. Something that'll be helpful for you all. So it is taking a look at some of the funding opportunities that different colleges offer, especially ones that you might be particularly suited for. And including ranking that college as when you're your first or second choice. This will be helpful because as we mentioned before, it's a lot of work to sort out getting funding, and there's so many, you want to cast your net as wide as possible. And so that will be helpful just from a funding perspective. The other thing is your experience, we're all Cambridge students, though your experience can differ based on what the college is. So there might be someone who wants to be in a college that's historically been, for women. And so that might be the experience you're looking for. Some people might want to be at a more modern college. Some folks might want to be central to town, or pick a college that's close to their apartment. There are a number of factors to kind of consider. For me, I knew funding was going to be a big, essentially variable that influenced whether or not I came to Cambridge. So I was choosing colleges that I knew had money, just in case the other funding opportunities I didn't, or money, and we're willing to spend that on students. So we're giving out, had really nice funding for students, but also just for other academic experiences, whether it's conferences or whatnot throughout the year. And so I used that to help decide. And I also knew I wanted to be central to town, which is super helpful because it's I'm within a 12-minute walk from my department and from my research center. So there are a lot of things to consider. I would, if you have a mentor that was in did their undergrad or postgrad at Cambridge, or even if they're a postdoc, I would definitely ask them for some of their recommendations, because it is really helpful to understand people's individual experiences at various colleges. Also, if you don't get a college that you selected as your first or second, it is not the end of the world. At the end of the day, it's wrong place. It's a Cambridge degree. And you're going to, meet really incredible people. You're also going to make friends across colleges and have experiences across colleges. So like, don't let that be something that is like a bummer for you. Because I think sometimes people do have that experience when they first hear the news. But yeah, definitely like rank your interests if you do have preferences. And then, and we can talk about this later, but if people do have questions about like individual people's experiences at colleges, like we could, help facilitate sharing that as well.
I'm just going to put like the website for funding search for Cambridge, which tells you funding provided by each college and university-wide funding as well. So that can help you make a decision.
I think Rebecca's question is next.
Is there any specific motivation or a plus for African females for their eligibility? Any quick tip to share with us?
Eligibility for
application or funding?
I don't know, Rebecca, if you're still, oh yeah, I see you. If you're still here, want to turn your mic on, let us know. Or so we can also answer from like how we're reading it. So I think, actually, you might be able to speak about it more since that isn't my experience.
Lost the question. Okay, it's here.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if you know anything from like so being funded by like Cambridge Africa or.
There's nothing on the website that specifically says like, for example, African females or women welcome here, kind of. The only plus I can think of, which is not really like official, is if you may be more likely to get a female only college if you don't get the college of your first choice, because that's what happened to me. But yeah, I think across the university, unless like the funding says women, like applications for women like more are welcome or like more welcome, there's not really any program in university that targets African females, I don't think.
Yeah, I can't think of one so far. I know that was like a priority for us, with camp.
Yeah,
been a communicated one for the university programs. Please, are there chances of application fee waiver for international students? We're answering your question now. Please, are there chances of application fee waiver for international students applying for PhD? Yes.
No fees, right?
Oh wait, PhD.
Yeah, no, there are no application fees for PhD. That was scrapped this year, right? It was this year, yeah. So it's free application. It's free to apply as a PhD student. Then MPhil and Masters and the other non-PhD courses is $50.
And we mentioned before that there can be some like monetary support for folks who do have application fees, and we'll share more details about that soon. And then Shioma's asking, can you apply for a PhD at Cambridge straight from undergrad? If yes, what are your chances? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is check your department. So depending on which department you're applying to, there may be a requirement for a master's program, and that master's might need to be in a particular like area, which is likely just like a discipline close to your department. So definitely check that. I don't think we have any statistics on people who go straight from undergrad to PhD versus master's to PhD. But if we kind of go back to the things we mentioned earlier about building a strong application, showing that you have research experience, showing that, there are people who are willing to vouch for how academically prepared you are. And then you can build out a really strong research proposal that is like feasible and that like you can achieve, then I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. If you want to be on the safe side and apply to PhD and master's, because you're committed to coming to Cambridge, or to like starting, graduate school this next cycle, then that's something that I know like some people have done.
Yeah, I think it depends on the course, because I know in engineering there are some programs where it's a PhD, but you have like the first year is like practically a master's. So you still have to do that master's, but you don't like leave after the master's, you go straight into your PhD. So it just depends on the course and if there's actually something available like that.
In your opinion, which is better for an undergrad transitioning into a research postgraduate program, a CDT or PhD program?
CDT is the one where you have like the master's here.
Oh, like 1 + 3. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's better. The problem with applying straight from undergrad for PhD is that at PhD, they want you to have some kind of research experience. And most time you don't get that research experience until you do like a master's when you have a project. So that's, if you have the research experience, good, but you're competing with people that have had a year's worth of research experience, essentially. So a CDP might be better.
And also in the note of research experience, it's, how well developed is your like research proposal? Like, are you actually prepared to start it now, or do you need that additional year to take more classes in your specified area? Because I think for me, the field I'm in now, I think I did appreciate having a master's before, but that's also because I transitioned fields. But if I had gone into, the field I'd done in undergrad where I did have access to research opportunities, then I would have been fine going kind of straight in. All right. Oh, last person. Two questions. Can one apply for MPhil, both MPhil and PhD? Short answer, yes. People do it for different reasons. One, because they might be interested in programs in different areas. And sometimes because they say, will I get into this PhD program? Let me apply to a master's as well, just in case. And then I can apply to the PhD after I finish the master's. And then which is more funded at Cambridge, MPhil or PhD? PhD.
Yeah, I think statistics is like around 65% PhDs get funding or something, or 70. And then MPhil and masters is like 20 or 30%. Yeah, PhDs by far are more funded.
Yeah. And it's for a variety of reasons. Like one is a longer degree, so someone paying that fee for 1 year versus 3 to 4. Also, a lot of like folks who are doing PhD programs are doing research that's funded by outside bodies.
Yeah.
So that could be like other research centers or like companies, or this other kind of like research councils. So there are a bunch of different reasons for that. But yeah, PhD is more likely to be funded, but also I think MPhils make up a larger proportion of the postgraduate population. So there's a lot of different things to consider. And
also, like, some people have rich supervisors that can fund PhD students as well. So you can actually get your funding for your supervisor. Mm-hmm. And are more likely to fund PhD students than MPhil students as supervisors.
Yeah. So we'll do a last call for questions. Give people about a minute to do that. In the meantime, it has been so nice to, one, share with you all a bit more context about the mentorship program, Cambridge experience, things to think about as you're applying, but also to be able to put a face to the many names we've read and emailed for so long. So it's so great to meet all of you. We'll give it a few more minutes. Oh, you know what? I think I can actually make the WhatsApp group and drop a link now, right? I think.
I'm going to, oh, sorry, what are you saying? I'm just going to put on the Cambridge Trust website so you can see the scholarships that they have as well. You do a scholarship search on the side, and then it shows you all the scholarships you're eligible for. So it's good to have a look there as well.
Okay, cool. So I'm actually going to drop in a link for the WhatsApp group so people can start adding themselves, but we'll also email that over.
So someone just asked, will the recordings be sent to us? I think the recordings will be uploaded on YouTube. Right.
Yeah, we're gonna upload it, but we'll also send a link to that upload.
Yeah. You're going to get an email with everything that you need from this session.
So if you see this WhatsApp group here, sorry, the link is there. We'll give folks a few minutes to add themselves. We'll also email some of these things over. Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording. Let's see.